Welcome to Author-ized. Today's guest is New York Times best-selling author Beatriz Williams, author of Along the Infinite Sea, Tiny Little Thing, The Secret Life of Violet Grant, 100 Summers, and Overseas. I just have to tell you this, in case you haven't done any research on her. Ms. Williams published 2 novels in 2015, 1 in 2014, 1 in 2013, and then, oh, you slacker, you skipped and went to 2011. Pretty amazing, right? But here's the kicker. She has 4 children. Of her latest novel, Along the Infinite Sea, Kirkus Review says, imagine the sound of music for big girls, flavored with a dash of Mad Men bitters. Welcome, Beatriz.
Thank you very much.
So we've got some questions we'd like to ask you. Thank you again for being here at Author-ized.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Let's start by talking about other writers. Who inspires you? Who has influenced you? Who are your favorites?
Well, I think, we can, add all of the usual classics, Jane Austen, of course, Dickens. I grew up in a very English literature-centric household. My father is British. But I would have to say that the books that really got me passionate about history and historical fiction would be Patrick O'Brian's Aubrey Maturin novels. If you haven't read them, they're an unlikely fit for me, considering that there are a few women on the ground. Actually takes place mostly on a ship in the British Navy during the Napoleonic Wars. It's mostly about a British naval captain, loosely based on Cochrane, and his ship's surgeon, a man named Stephen Maturin. But what it does as historical fiction, it crosses all boundaries, and it does what I have really tried to do in my fiction, which is to absorb you so completely in an era. You don't need long lectures or even paragraph-long lectures about the history. You're just simply absorbed in it. It's there in the dialogue. It's in the clothes they're wearing, the objects they're using, the food they're eating. It's just, beautifully told. And these books, that they have all the magical sentences of literature, great literature, and yet they're just page turners. You can't stop reading. I was in college, and I was chain reading these one after the other. They're fantastic.
When did you know, when was that deciding moment that you knew you were a writer?
I don't think there was a moment, in the sense that, I've always been scribbling. As a child, I was sort of the one at my desk, and I was passionate about I was a big racehorse fanatic from about, ages 8 through 14, and I would write long novels about racehorses, and it was always sort of a part of me, and I always knew at some point I would write. I took a very more practical career path in the beginning. I got an MBA in finance, and I was in management consulting for a number of years. But once I had kids, it sort of gave me the opening to really get going with the writing.
Kirkus Review says of Tiny Little Thing that the underlying message is that money can't buy happiness. Was that your point? What messages, if any, do you want readers to take away from your books?
That's a really interesting question, because I think that most of the time when I'm writing a book, I'm not thinking about, well, what is the message here? I'm telling a story. I consider myself a storyteller, and I consider that, just a wonderful and very privileged thing to do. It's this marvelous, long, tradition we have in human society, and it's a way of preserving our values, our virtues, and it's a way also of helping people negotiate this astonishingly complex thing we call human nature. And if there's any message that I want to convey, I think it's really that, at some point in all of our lives, we reach a crossroads, and at which point we have to make some sort of choice that really decides what sort of person we're going to be in life. It's not like this is a right or wrong answer, but I think that my message, if anything, is to convey that it is possible to be the best human being you can be, given your circumstances in life and the choices that are given to you. And it's that ability to rise up above our sort of animal natures that makes us truly human. And every one of my characters reaches that crossroads at some point, reaches that choice. The point is to be the best human being you can be.
Great. You have 4 children.
Yes.
Could you please
At last count.
please tell us common folk how you managed to do 2 novels in 1 year, 5 novels in 5 years. I know moms that can't manage to get their hair cut in a year. So give us a picture of how you manage all this, how you manage your time, where, when, how. I have one more question.
Yes.
Do you have superhuman powers?
If the problem is the picture that we're looking at here is a mess. There's piles of dirty laundry in this picture. There are field trip permission forms that have gone unsigned. There are kids' lunches that didn't quite make it out the door. There's a lot of loose ends in this picture, and also one very heroic husband who helps me tie it all together. I think it's just partly that, having kids, I couldn't have written without them, in the sense that children, I always knew, and again, I said I always wanted to be a writer. Well, having the courage to actually do that is, it's immense, because every time you put a book out, you're essentially walking out naked into the public square, and there's going to be rejection. That not everybody is going to like your book. In fact, some people are going to hate your book and the horse it rode in on, and you're going to have to deal with that. And I am somebody who, I've always been sort of the one trying to get the good grades and all that. So for me, having kids, having that base where I always have somebody who loves and needs me, no matter how badly my latest book might crash and burn or how many editors reject me. So having kids gave me the courage to do this, and also gave me a need to have a space of my own, because after the 3rd child, and having been through several years at that point of diapers and naps and tantrums, I needed to carve out a space of my own. So I couldn't have done it without them and their support, and I apologize to them that the house is a mess, and that sometimes mommy doesn't quite remember to schedule all the play dates that the other mommies do.
Is there anything you want to say to your readers about your books, about your life, about prospective writers who might be out there?
I sort of feel, with every book talk, I sort of come up with something new. I guess, if there's one thing I do want to convey to my readers, it's just the joy of reading. I think that I am, immensely lucky to be in this position and to be able to write for a living, and to, I hope bring moments of joy and insight to people. The joy of reading, I think the best emails I get are from people who had sort of stopped reading for a while, or were just reading nonfiction, and reading one of my books brought back that joy, where you have this storytelling, but, as well, sort of a deeper level, and hopefully I've managed to bring together magical sentences as well as a compelling story. And if I can do that for readers, and hopefully even inspire writers to do the same, I think I've probably lived the life I wanted to live.
Mm-hmm. Well, those are all the questions I have, and now we have one final feature called One-Liners. So we're going to take your newest book. We want you to open to any page, read a passage, and then maybe talk about it a little.
Oh gosh, okay. This could be dangerous because it's random, completely unprepared. I'm just going to open right here, and of course we're at the end of a chapter. So do I start on the next one? Let's see. All right. So we're in an exchange between Annabelle Domrick and her husband Johann, who is a German. He's a general, actually, in the Nazi army, and this is, I think, 1936 at this point in the book. He says, "I want to make you happy, Annabelle. I want to be a husband to you." She says, "You are my husband, Johann. I don't understand." "I mean the husband you want, the husband in your heart." There was something so melancholy in his voice, as if his own heart lay in 2 pieces on the floor between us. I leaned forward and touched his cheek. You are Johann, of course you are. You're a wonderful husband, the most wonderful father to Florian. But you cannot follow me. I can't go against my own conscience. If you really loved me, you wouldn't want me to. So we'll stop there. And actually, it's funny that I should open to that part because it really is sort of the heart of the book, which is the battle between what is in your heart, what your heart wants, and what your conscience tells you to do. And that's the theme really kind of at the heart of Along the Infinite Sea. So I'll leave it a bit at that. But obviously, it's the 1930s, it's Europe, it's Germany, and there are some very troubling questions, I think, for anyone's conscience at that point in time.
Thank you, everyone, for watching Beatriz Williams on Author-ized. Come back soon.